Welcome back to the Monmouth Basketball Hawks Nest podcast. Coming to you with another sweep for Monmouth. They sweep Quinnipiac. The first game was a struggle, but they found a way in the end. Game two, a little more comfortable, ran away in the last few minutes. But either way, it's a sweep for Monmouth. They are 7-3 in the MAC, 7-4 overall, but we don't really care about that because we didn't really have a non-conference slate anyway. So 7-3. Monmouth is looking really good right now. They weren't convincing wins over the weekend, but you know what? When your best player is not himself or at his very best, and the entire team steps up, and you just find ways to win, that's the difference. Great teams find a way to win, even on their worst nights, and that's what Monmouth is doing right now. And you know what? They had the early loss to St. Peter's, which was a very close game. They had the sweep against Siena, who is the best team in the conference. And on the road, you're expecting them to have a tough time against a team like that some nights, and they almost split with them. And every other game, Monmouth has played really good, and they look like the second-best team in this conference. So we're going to go over all the games today and look forward to the next week or two and some schedule changes. So I'm going to bring Marc on now. Congratulations, Marc, on your Bills. Big win.
Yeah, it just feels so unnatural that the last two sports weekends have gone so strong for me. Back-to-back sweeps for Monmouth, back-to-back wins for the Bills. Let's just keep it rolling again next weekend, Ryan.
So the first game, Monmouth struggled throughout the game. Quinnipiac led most of the way, and Monmouth just couldn't get over the hump. Really the entire game. Quinnipiac started on a 21-9 run to start the game. Monmouth cuts 24-21. Quinnipiac's back up 33-24, and they led by 7 at the half. And they just kept kind of taking runs at each other, but Monmouth just couldn't get over that 5, 6, 7-point hump. And Quinnipiac did a great job answering the entire game. And you know what? Credit Quinnipiac, as King Rice did with Baker Dunleavy in the postgame. They're a young, scrappy team that has a lot of young weapons. They have Vergoni, who we'll get into later, but they have a lot of young guys that just aren't ready to be that top team yet. But I kind of look at this team a little bit, not so much as talented, but kind of similar to Monmouth when Justin Robinson and that group of sophomores, and King Rice said that we're coming. And I can kind of see Quinnipiac being that group in a couple of years because they have a really talented young core. They're just not ready to be that team yet. But don't be surprised if they surprise a couple of teams throughout the season this year. They're a solid team that really pushed us all weekend at home. Same thing in the second half. Monmouth gets it to 46-42. They come back. Quinnipiac pushes it back to a 12-point lead. Pappas makes a shot, makes a three, and it just kind of kept going back and forth. And late in the game, Pappas hits a three to get to 3. Williams on Quinnipiac hits a three to make it back 6 points, and then they hit a layup to make it 72-64 with about a minute and a half to go. And that kind of felt like the dagger. You're down 8 with a minute and a half. All right, we're going to hit a couple shots maybe. We're going to foul. They're going to hit free throws. We're probably going to lose this game. And I won't name names, but there is a certain Monmouth fan out there in the crowd that did turn his TV off. I won't say who it was. But, Pappas and Hammond each go 1 or 2 from the line. Malik gets a huge steal, gets to Japu, hits McClary first shot. They're down 4. Vergoni missed some foul shots late in the game that were huge. They said something like he had been 21 for 22 in his last few games going into the game, and he misses 3 free throws in the closing minutes of the game, and that killed him. It was similar to Hammond at Siena, where a guy that you just don't expect it to go that way, and Vergoni misses the big free throws. And the last play of the game, well, right before that, Malik hits a huge 3. Malik was the star of the night. We'll get to him in a minute. But Malik hits a 3. King Rice draws up an outstanding play and had multiple options to it, as he talked about in the postgame. But George Pappas throws a half-court pass that made my throat sink into my stomach because I couldn't believe he threw that pass. But it was right on the money to Malik. He throws it to McClary about 10, 12 feet away from the basket on the baseline, and he drains it with half a second to go. And you're like, oh, my God, we just tied the game. After all that, we just tied it. And they almost had a shot to win it in regulation. King Rice draws up another good play after Quinnipiac botches the inbound pass. They threw a full court pass, and no one touched it. So we got it back under our own basket. They throw an alley-oop, probably like a 7-8 footer to Deion Hammond. I thought it went down, but nothing but net. But it airballed. It just missed. But in the end, they go to overtime, and Monmouth just demolishes them in overtime. Quinnipiac hit a quick three, but after that, I mean, Monmouth ran away with it. And it's one of those games you look back, and it's an ugly, ugly win. But you know what? They did everything it took to win that game, and they did just enough. And you look at the stats, and Quinnipiac dominated them in just about every category, but it didn't matter because Quinnipiac turned the ball over 27 times. And when you do that, you're not going to beat many teams. So huge, huge win for the Hawks.
Yeah, the freshman Taimu Chenery, he reminds me of Cam Young, who was the MAC the leading scorer for QU a few years back. Similar body type. Cam Young had the greatest pump fake I've ever seen in the MAC. Chenery, just same number, same length, nice jumper. The one thing that I really noticed in this game was that how much Quinnipiac misses Rich Kelly. And we had harped kind of on how much low and mid majors can be depleted when they groom and they develop these under recruited guys to be stars, and then they end up leaving through the grad transfer rule. And again, I am not a proponent. The NCAA looks like they're pushing through that at any point during your career, a Division I athlete can transfer without sitting out once. And I am not a proponent of that because I feel like it's going to continue to decimate low and mid majors and turn them into AAA squads for those Power 5, Power 6 conference teams. And with all of the turnovers and the struggles of the young point guards and decision makers for Quinnipiac this weekend, you had to feel for them maybe just a tad. It's hard to feel for Quinnipiac because I can't stand them going back to the NEC days. But if you're just looking at it not through the Monmouth blue glasses lens, and you're looking at it as a low and mid major and what they could have been with the young talent that they have this year if they had returned Rich Kelly, not to mention Kevin Marfo, who was among the top rebounders in the entire nation, who ended up going to Texas A&M and barely plays. Rich Kelly has carved out a nice niche for himself at Boston College, but you saw the youth and you saw what happens when you lose two arguably, top 10 MAC players to that grad transfer rule.
Yeah, you know what? Quinnipiac has been a thorn in our side since I was even a freshman at Monmouth at the NEC days, like you mentioned, and they always seem to get us. They always seem to beat us in the boards by about 20 every night, and it took a long time to get past Quinnipiac, and Monmouth finally broke through a few years ago, but we had a bad losing streak against them, and I think you can actually make the argument right now. I think you can make the argument that had Kelly and Marfo stayed, and you add this new kid, Taimu, to the mix, and they're young guys, I think you can make the argument that they are as good as Siena and Monmouth, if not better. They may have pushed Siena to be the most talented team in the conference. And I think Monmouth is very talented, and they are the deepest team, and they can definitely beat Siena. But I still think Siena is the most talented and the best team. I think Quinnipiac may have had a chance to be the most talented and the best team had those two not gone.
Yeah, and again, unfortunately, it's just a consistently bad optic for what happens for low and mid majors every year, and it's going to get worse as the NCAA continues to feed their Power 5 and Power 6 conference teams.
So in this one, Malik was an absolute star. Malik Martin did everything in this game, and without him, we don't even come close to winning this game, because although Deion had 21 points, he had a good night in the stat sheet. He was just 5 of 21 from the field. So Deion did struggle, although he had 21 points, 9 of those came from free throws. So when your star wasn't playing his best, Malik Martin, in 27 minutes, look at what he did. 23 points, 8 rebounds, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. That is a career game for Malik Martin. And I feel like we keep saying that every weekend. Malik Martin had a career game, 16 points. Malik Martin had this game. Well, he did it again. He keeps getting better. And I think it was 2 or 3 podcasts ago where I said Malik Martin, I could see him being an all-MAC third-team guy because he is doing everything. And I don't think you can find me 15 players in the MAC that are doing anything better than what Malik Martin's doing right now.
Especially when you take into account that he's doing it for the team with the most MAC wins thus far.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I thought Quinnipiac did a lot of really strong things defensively over the weekend. One thing they did not do well was guard Malik Martin. They were sagging off of him and almost daring him to beat them. I don't know if the plan was to overload against Dion and try to take away good looks for him and maybe slide over on George Pappas, but Malik Martin and even Marcus McClary were left open consistently. And I know that Malik Martin is now playing the 5 a lot. And when you look at opposing bigs, and Seth Pinckney is a really, really good player, like really, really good MAC big. 7'1", jump out of the gym, finishes his alley-oops, makes his free throws, blocks and alters shots. But he was not comfortable chasing 6'6" Malik Martin around the perimeter, and Malik took advantage. So good for Malik. A lot of times I feel like Malik passes up those shots in the past, and now his 4th year in the program, we had talked about he was only 17 as a freshman when he arrived in West Long Branch. You have to take those shots when guys are sagging off of you, because if he doesn't take those shots, it's only going to lead to more double teaming or shading towards Dion and making things harder for Dion and George. And Malik's offensive game has come a long way. And if opposing 5s are going to be sagging off, he needs to continue to be a killer out there like this.
I mean, we're getting to the point where, he's not as lethal because we know what Pappas is, but it's getting to the point where when Malik takes a 3, you're almost expecting it to go in now. Kind of like Pappas. When he's open, you expect the ball to go through the net. Malik is getting to that point where he shoots up a 3, and you're like, all right, that's going in. I mean, he's shooting it at a higher percentage now, and he doesn't take that many of them where Pappas has to force it a little bit throughout the game because he needs to get those shots in. But Malik is wide open when he takes his shots. He's been so efficient with everything he's doing. It's amazing to watch the growth that we've had from this kid.
It's actually interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's actually better off taking those set shots where he's wide open from, say, 13 feet out to the 3-point line than he is driving. Because if you drive on a Seth Pinckney or, one of those big guys, it's going to be a problem. But if you're set with your feet and you can relax, and what we've always said about Malik was sometimes he gets those happy feet a little bit when he is uncomfortable off the bounce or receiving a pass. If he can stay set, be calm, and take open shots, he's going to continue to have big games like this because the defense are just setting him up for success.
So Miles Druth will get a little bit more in the second game, but the first game, solid night, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 3 steals in 17 minutes. Kid's doing it all right now. 2 of the stars from the game besides Malik, Marcus McClary. Listen to this stat line. 11 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal, and 4 assists in 36 minutes. That's close to a career game as Marcus has ever had, aside from playing good defense. And Pappas had 16 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, and 2 steals. It felt like all weekend, every guy in the Monmouth box score had 2 or 3 steals and a block or 2. I mean, all weekend. I mean, they played such great defense the whole time out there. And you see Pappas is finally hitting his stride a little bit more. He's getting open a little more often. He's getting to the free throw line. He's finding ways to score when teams are not allowing him to shoot open threes all day long, like we saw the first couple weekends. So, good for Pappas finding the box score and getting involved. And McClary is doing everything right now. I mean, he's rebounding, he's defending, he's scoring. Again, he's not the best shooter on the team, but for the most part, he's hitting those open shots when you need him to, and that's all you need from McClary. You don't need him scoring 10, 15, 20 points a night. You need just contributions from him and to just not make mistakes when he's in offense, which he was doing as a freshman and sophomore constantly. He was taking bad shots. He wasn't confident in his shot. And every time he touched the ball, we're like, oh, no, give it away. That is not Marcus McClary anymore. He's a confident player on both ends of the floor, and it's showing in his senior season, really in a big way.
Yeah, one thing about Ruth, his defense, on-ball defense, which we had kind of pumped up a little bit before we had seen him in the Monmouth Blue based on what you and I had heard from some people around New Jersey high school basketball. But the way that he locks opposing guards down, the only two players that he has not been able to stop going to the basket, one is Jalen Pickett because he's able to cheat and push off every single time. And the other one is this kid, Savion Lewis, who makes atrocious decisions with the basketball, but his God-given talent and his first step is beyond scary good. I mean, he blew by Miles Ruth a few times over the weekend, and it just made you go, wow. Now, thankfully, half the times he got by his defender, he was chucking the ball nowhere near where it should have gone, and he's a kid who I wouldn't let play point guard. I would make him be, kind of that off guard and utilize what he can do. But again, we're now, 11 games into the season, and we've only found two guys at the MAC level that Miles Ruth can't consistently stay in front of and lock down. That's pretty good for a freshman.
So let me ask you this. Do you think we're getting to the point where Miles Ruth should be considered for all-MAC defensive team?
So the MAC, I don't believe they've ever had a five-man all-defensive team. What?
They don't have that. I forgot.
No, but if they did, without a doubt, I mean, I think he and McClary are guys that should be considered for that. But without a doubt, Miles Ruth, I think if his trajectory continues, he has a chance before he graduates to be the Defensive Player of the Year in the MAC. The problem is the MAC generally gives it to a guy who plays the front court and has inflated shot blocking stats. So Casey Ndefo is blocking something like 4 shots a game, and Pinckney is averaging over 3 blocks a game. So, but yeah, I think, you know what, maybe that's something we could do on the podcast at the end of the year is do our own all-MAC defensive team. And if you watch Monmouth, he is by far their best individual defender. I think Marcus McClary might be better as a team defender, but Miles Ruth by far is their best individual defender and the best on-ball defender we've seen at Monmouth since Josh James. I actually think Josh James's was more based on effort, and I think Miles Ruth is just blessed with a superior on-ball defensive skill. I keep asking, I want to know what his wingspan is because it can't be anywhere close to his 6'1" stature.
Yeah, I feel like Miles Ruth is quickly becoming the best defender I've ever seen at Monmouth in 10 years. He really is just that good. Again, Dion in this game didn't have his best night, but he still got 21 points, but six of those came from late free throws in overtime, 9 overall from the line. He shot it great from the free throw line, but this is the thing. He shot 5 for 21, and King talked about it in the postgame. He's dealing with a wrist injury and ankle injuries. So when you have those two things happening and you still score 20 points, it's actually impressive what he did over the weekend. But you know what? He's still gritting it out on the boards, on defense. He still hit some huge shots over the weekend, late in games when they really needed it. So, again, Dion did whatever it took, and he's playing injured. So let's give a pass for that. Again, 21 points, nothing to be screaming about. He didn't quite get that in game 2, but the team stepped up and found a way to win anyway. Sam Chapu had a great weekend. He's a guy we were giving a little bit of business to the last couple of weeks because you know what? He wasn't playing well, and he played his way out of a starting job. And now I think what King Rice did is the perfect situation for this kid. And, being the starting point guard in the MAC is a lot of pressure because it's a guard-oriented league. So when you have a player like Sam Chapu, who's a good player, but he's not an all-MAC, not the most talented player, that's going to be a problem when you have a lot of great guards that play overseas in the future going against him. So coming off the bench and being the guy for the second unit, playing against some second unit guys, I think it is the perfect fit for Sam Chapu. Scores 7 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds in 28 minutes. That's the best production we've seen from him in a while. And I think it's a really, really good move by King Rice doing this now and making Miles the starter and making Sam in charge of the second team.
Yeah, and Chapeau, the one thing that we've always said is that he's like a quarterback out there and he keeps guys organized. And when he's coming in with the second unit and he's alongside Donovan Totley, who can play on the verge of out of control, but in a good way, but sometimes it goes over. And then Gob Gabriel, who's a young player, when he's playing with those type of guys on the wing, it's a really natural fit to have him out there keeping them organized. Whereas Ruth can start from the tip alongside four seniors who know exactly what they're doing, and he could just be a bulldog on defense and facilitate in a way that sets him up for more success as well. Just wanted to jump in on Pappas real quick. George Pappas morphed into Reggie Miller circa 1990s against the Knicks, where he made the three to make it 64-61, and then he made three free throws getting fouled, and it was 67-64. And then he stole the inbounds pass, and the ball was like 99.9% down and somehow rimmed out. And that's when it seemed like Monmouth had lost the game to me. And credit Monmouth for keeping their heads up. But George Pappas, just the evolution of his game, the maturity and the improvement. First of all, he had the big jump from sophomore to junior year. But now from junior to senior year, like you had said earlier, you're always confident. Every time he shoots the ball, you're more confident now when he's distributing the ball. He's getting better defensively. I think that working out with his brother and Dion and building his body up has helped him. Even a few times he got switched off on Rigoni over this weekend, who is a thicker, stronger player. And George was able to hold his ground defensively, which we hadn't seen from George in the past.
So, yeah, agreed on all of that. Totally had a tough weekend. Did look good at times. Did make some great moves, hit some big shots. But just 6 points on 2 of 9 shooting this one in just 15 minutes. Still kind of working his way back into the lineup as a starter or a guy that gets 20, 25 minutes. Ruddy's continuing to struggle in the field, from the field, but had a great game on defense and on the boards in this one. 9 rebounds, a block, and an assist. That's what we need from Ruddy right now. And you talked about it all along. Ruddy is not the best back to the basket, hook shot type of guy. He is a guy, he needs to be facing the basket, going at the basket, and really dunking the ball. I mean, he just, right now at this point, he just doesn't have a great touch with those little floaters in the lane like Miles Foster and some of these guys do. But here's the thing. If he can just play defense, be big on the boards, throw down a dunk here and there, and just be active on offense, setting screens, doing his thing out there, being a big, broad body, strong guy that he is, that's all we need from Ruddy. We are a guard team. We don't need him scoring 10 points a game. We need him rebounding, blocking shots, and being a physical guy down there. So you know what? If Ruddy can give me what he gave me in game 1, I'll sign on for that. I don't need him scoring and hitting hook shots all day. We can get some of that from other guys. We can get 3-pointers from other guys. What Ruddy did on the first game is totally fine for me.
Totally agree. One more thing is to keep his head up, have good body language, and rim run every single time up and down the floor, because you see what Malik Martin's able to do just by running hard. How many times have we seen now over the last 2 weekends where he's just beating the opposing centers up and down for wide open layups? Ruddy is athletic enough to do that against Mac Biggs, and that's a better setup for him than receiving the ball back to the basket, trying to make something happen out of nothing. Just give strong effort and good things will happen with a guy like him.
100%. Not much production from the bench in this game. King is starting to narrow the rotation a little bit, and that's something that we hit on a little bit from a fan question on a previous podcast. It looks like we are going to keep playing all these guys, but maybe not as many minutes spread out. So Luka didn't get many minutes. Holmstrom didn't get many, and he actually took a huge charge late in the game. Great play by Holmstrom taking the charge. But overall, the bench seems to be getting shortened a little bit, which we kind of expected. I didn't think it would happen this quickly, but we figured eventually they are going to shorten things, and some of these guys aren't going to get as many minutes, which is fine. Going over some of the stats from the game. Monmouth shot just 34.6% from the field compared to Quinnipiac's 41%. Neither team shot it great, but 34% usually doesn't get it done, and just 31% from three for Monmouth. Definitely not their best shooting night, far from their best. They shot at 72% from the line, which is great. That's about what we need, 70% or more. Monmouth did play great on the boards. They out-rebounded Quinnipiac by 7, and the turnovers was the key stat of the game. Quinnipiac had 27 turnovers. Now, Monmouth had 17 of their own, which is not good. I like to keep the number below 14, 13 if we can. That seems to be the magic number for me. But 27 turnovers. I mean, we talked about with Elias Sports Bureau last week. If you shoot 11% from the line, like from the three-point line, like Marc did, how often do you win a college basketball game? I want to know how often. If you commit 27 turnovers in the game, and I know overtime is an extra 5 minutes, but they committed plenty of those before overtime. When you commit 27 turnovers in a game, what percentage of the time are you winning the game? Because it can't be more than 10, 20%. 27 turnovers is a lot, and it really did Quinnipiac in.
Yeah, Monmouth didn't play well, but ultimately Monmouth's experience riding it out with those 4 seniors and Sam Chapu, who's a junior down the stretch, versus Quinnipiac, who are trying to integrate some young ball-handling point guards, was the difference in this game.
So game 1 sets up game 2, because had Monmouth lost that game and not come back, you wonder what their psyche is going into game 2. Now, they could have been extra motivated and won the game anyway, but you don't know. Maybe they're down, maybe they're tired, and Quinnipiac gets a little jump on them, and they get swept. So that comeback was huge, and it sets up a game 2 win and a sweep. Monmouth wins it 70-63. I expected Monmouth to come out a little bit better. I expected them to handle this game pretty easily. It wasn't quite that way. Rigoni, my guy, burned us again for 19 points. Every time I watch this friggin' guy play, he seems to be scoring 20 or more on us and doing things to tear my heart out. When I said, a couple of years ago that, this guy, I said something like, this guy looks like he's never touched a basketball before. Look at his body. Look at his makeup. Look at the way he shoots the ball like an idiot. I said so many things about this guy, and then he dropped 30 or 35 on us that day, like a week later. And now he's still torturing us. So I can't wait for this kid to just leave Quinnipiac.
Chances are he'll be back next year too.
He'll torture me for a 5th and a 6th senior year. He'll just keep coming back. Kind of like JJ Redick at Duke. It seemed like he was there for like 9 years, but he just keeps coming back. Quinnipiac got off to a quick start in this game, led 5-0, but Monmouth went on a big run, led 19-12 at the under 8. They kept holding the 6-7 point lead, but Quinnipiac kept coming back to it. All weekend, guys kept taking jabs at each other, the two teams. So Monmouth took a 35-33 halftime lead after a totally headed a jumper right before regulation ended.
A step back that looked like Kemba Walker.
It was beautiful.
When Donovan Totley has his confidence up and he is playing within a little bit within the Monmouth offense, and he gives you those glimpses where at the end of the first half, all of those second unit guys were looking towards him. He banged a 3, then he did that step back that reminded me of Kemba at Madison Square Garden. Like, the fact that he only scored 5 points in each of these 2 games is mind-boggling to me, because when you start to watch him get it going in those spurts, he has the look of a guy that is destined to have a 20-plus point scoring game in a Monmouth uniform and a 30-plus point scoring game in a Monmouth uniform. It's just getting more consistency. And one thing that we haven't really spoke about, Ryan, is Miles Ruth's emergence, which was not expected from anyone outside of that Monmouth locker room, has actually cut into Donovan Totley's role, his playing time, and his shot attempts.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you know what? The thing is, Miles Ruth is a safe player. He's not going to turn the ball over a lot. He's had a couple here and there, but he's not going to make a lot of mistakes like that, where Totley is more explosive. But the way his play is, the style of his play, he's going to turn the ball over a little more often. So there's
Mm-hmm.
times in the game where you want totally scoring, but there's also times where you don't really want totally in the game right now because you're worried about him turning it over or making a bad decision. So if Ruth isn't here playing the way he is, King Rice probably sucks it up and plays totally anyway. But I think right now Ruth is a safer option where, kind of like I would say about Malik last year, I want him in the middle 20 to 25 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Because he can get a little bit erratic late in the game and turn the ball over. That's kind of totally for me right now. I don't know if I want to see him out there the last few minutes of the game because he's a little turnover prone and doesn't always make the right choices. But you know what? That's not going to last. Like, totally once he fits in, it's going to be scary because when he's driving to the basket and hitting his shots and doing what he does with the, handling the ball, that's going to open up everything else for Pappas and Malik and Dion. So when all those things are happening, totally is going to be a weapon for these guys. And you know what? Right now he's playing well, but he is not playing close to what we're expecting, to see from him.
Yeah, it's very interesting in that I kind of thought coming into the season that he might have been our second most talented and most important and most productive player behind Dion. And the way that he's being utilized, it's interesting. I think that the move to Sam Chapu in the second unit really, really is important for him because so many times we see him out there with guys who are not as groomed as scorers or are younger or haven't fulfilled a big role yet at the Division I level, and guys kind of stand around and watch him, and then he's kind of forced into dancing around and trying to make something out of nothing. So I think that the combination of Chapu with him, who Chapu kind of puts guys in the right spot, will ultimately really benefit Totley and benefit that second unit. I'm still not a huge fan of going with the full second unit for so long.
Agreed.
I think that now that Ryan, it came fast, but all of a sudden we're in the second half of MAC play now, starting next week with Manhattan. So I think trimming the rotation a little bit and making sure that guys like Dion and George and McClary and Martin are playing a little bit bigger minutes and ramping them up with the MAC tournament coming up before we know it is definitely important. But Totley is the one guy on that bench that has the ability to totally swing a game our way if he's having a night. And I think that him, and I know you're going to get to Jarvis, I think that he and Jarvis continue to be huge X factors as now all of a sudden we're into the second half of MAC play, and neither have made anywhere close to the impact we thought they would.
Yeah, no doubt about it. If those two make an impact like we're expecting, I'm fully expecting to see Monmouth in the championship game in Atlantic City. If they don't, it's going to be really interesting to see how far they go. But, at the 15-minute mark in the second half of this game, Miles Ruth had one of the most exciting plays I've seen in a long time for Monmouth. He bangs a three at one end, gets back on defense, blocks a jump shooter, and then 5 seconds later blocks another jump shooter before the ball goes out of bounds. When's the last time you saw a 6-foot guard bang a three and block two guys bigger than him, not under the basket, but on jump shots in that span? It was one of those things you're like, what just happened? You're not used to seeing guards block a lot of shots, but that play, you're like, wow, this kid is so scrappy and plays so hard. You don't expect that to happen for a guy like him, but it's showing what I said before. If there's an all defensive team for the MAC, he's got to be towards top of the list.
Yeah, unbelievable. The way that he spearheads the defense, he does not play like a freshman, but he plays with the energy and the exuberance of a freshman. The last Monmouth guard that I remember making a play similar to that, and I mean, this is going to tell you a lot about the talent level of Miles Ruth on that side of the ball, was Jelon Hornbeek.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you there. I'm with you. You still there, Mark?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, the last thing I heard was Hornbeek. Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I want to make sure. So after the Ruth 3, Monmouth gets a 46-37 lead, but Quinnipiac makes a big run of their own. They tied at 54. They go, boy, here we go again. It's going to be another night.
Mm-hmm.
And Dion hits a big three with about 2:30 to go, and it really never got closer after that. Again, a big three from Dion after a tough weekend. Good to see the ball go through the basket. Malik made the breaking three to get it to a 9-point lead, and Monmouth never looked back from there with a 70-63 win. 2 late threes from Dion and Malik just did them in, and it was good to see the Hawks close this one out with a couple minutes to go instead of giving us a heart attack for 2 days in a row. So, they ease up on us a little bit there. But, not one Hawk dominated this game. You look up and down the board, and we only had one guy in double figures who was Pappas. It's 13 points. Also had 5 boards, 2 blocks, and a steal in the game. So he had a really nice night. Pappas, not his most productive, but you look up and down, Malik 9 points. Root 8 points with 4 steals. McClary only had 2 points, had a tough night with 1 for 9 shooting, but he had 6 rebounds, did everything else. Dion only 8 points in this game, 2 for 11 shooting. Miles Foster had a good night, 6 points, 6 boards. We'll get to him in a minute. But you look up and down, Ruddy, 4 points, totally 5 points. Nobody dominated this game. It was just a big collective effort where Monmouth really spread out the scoring, and they just kind of welled their way over Quinnipiac this weekend.
Yeah, you got 30 bench points between Foster. Ruddy gave you 4. Gobb had 7. He had a nice game. Chapu gave you 8 and totally gave you 5. So this was a game where in the first game, you were really reliant on those 4 seniors, those 4 starters. And in this game, this was a game where Monmouth's depth and overall talent level had them win again when they didn't play that well. You know what this game reminded me of, Ryan? This game reminds me of MAC tournament first round, where you're like a 2 or a 3 seed, and you're getting like a pesky 7, 6, 11, whatever it is, and the team just plays really, really hard, but you just have more talent and you survive in advance. And I think that going through games like this and utilizing your full roster and surviving through games like this are really, really important for this team. And that's the one real benefit to these back-to-backs, are that it does simulate conference tournament play really well. And I think Monmouth winning the way they did the day before, give Quinnipiac a nod, because their spirit was not broke coming back the next day. They gave another really, really strong effort, but that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of being that 2, that 1, that 3, playing the 6, the 7, the 8, 9, whatever you want to say, and surviving and advancing. And that's what Monmouth did in this game. They survived. They grabbed another win, 7-3 in the MAC. Looking really strong when you start looking up and down those MAC standings.
Yeah, I definitely good point there. I mentioned Foster before, 6 points, 6 rebounds in 7 minutes. And Jaden Dale talked about this on Twitter a little bit, possibly being an all-MAC freshman team if he keeps getting more minutes. We've talked about it before, and King Rice even alluded to it in the postgame. If Miles Foster gets into better shape, which he will, because we've seen it happen with Chris Brady and Zach Tillman. They have a weight program there. Once he gets stronger and gets in better conditioning, Miles Foster is excellent finishing around the basket. You like to see him dunk the ball a little bit more and get up, but you know what? He is finishing around the basket better than just about anybody out there in the MAC right now. And when he touches the ball, you're pretty confident the ball is going in. If he's within that 5 to 7 foot range, you're pretty confident the ball is going in. Something we can't say about everybody right now. But when he's out there, he's doing a really, really nice job, and he's not forcing anything. He's athletic enough where he makes some nice moves around the basket and gets himself in a good scoring position. But, Foster looks really good out there, which is not something we were expecting this early. Jarvis, King said in the postgame last week that Jarvis was ready to go last weekend, but they wanted to give him a little more time to get back from the concussion. Part of it I didn't totally agree with. He mentioned that when a guy is out with an injury, he doesn't like to get them right back into the rotation because he doesn't feel it's fair to the guys that have been out there. I don't know if I completely agree with that. If he gets suspended, if his grades were down or something happened, I get it. But you know what? I also understand giving him limited minutes because he's coming back from the injury. But if he's good to go, I don't know if I agree with not playing him because other guys are out there because he was hurt. There wasn't an excuse for him not playing. He was hurt. So, if there's a need to be filled and Ruddy goes down or Foster can't play and we need Jarvis in there, I think it's fine to play Jarvis. I'm a little offense philosophy for that one, but I'm not disagreeing with King Rice on very much right now, so I'll take it. But Jarvis got 4 minutes of the game, got his feet wet a little bit. But again, those two are going to be very big for us moving forward, playing next to Ruddy in the post against these MAC bigs.
Yeah, on Foster, definitely smooth in the low post. Might be Monmouth's least athletically gifted guy on the roster. He's a bit of a plotter. He's Zach Tillman 2.0, except for a lefty. Sets good screens, rolls, good touch inside. He's not going to jump up and block a bunch of shots, but if they can continue to develop his body, he can end up becoming, a really big weapon. I think one of the problems with all of these bigs is that Ruddy will have a good night one night. Vuga showed out one night. Foster showed out one night. We know that Jarvis has a high ceiling. None of the four of them have separated themselves yet. And I think that's the problem, Ryan, that maybe King Rice didn't feel the urgency to put Jarvis in right away because he thought that Foster and Ruddy were giving him good work in practice that week or had played well the week before, that Vuga was a good look against that opposing big. Really, you got to look at these four guys and challenge them. Like, who of you four is going to step to the forefront and be, that go-to big? Because right now, none of them have. And I'm not saying that they've played poorly per se, but none of them have done enough to step out of the limelight of the four of them. And that's why Malik Martin is now playing the 5. Okay, yeah. So if I was one of those four guys, and I know it's hard when Ruddy's coming back from injury, Jarvis was out last year with injury and then was concussed. Vuga and Foster are true freshmen. I understand it's hard to think this way, but I'd be looking around and saying, like, I need to be the guy that steps up and gives this team a go-to big. And they need one of those guys to do that. And the guy with the mentality to do that, I think, is Jarvis. Probably the guy who has the best chance to do it based on consistent playing time would be Ruddy. And then the guy who can give you the most consistent scoring would be Foster. So it's interesting. It's kind of like, can we go in the lab and take a little bit of each of them and put them together and make one super center? That would be great. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But that will be an important thing that we have to look at going down the stretch of the last 10 MAC games is which one or two of those bigs is really going to step forward and assert themselves. Because you can't play 4 bigs with Malik Martin starting at the 5. It's impossible.
Speaking of Ruddy, had a pretty nice game here. 4 points, 3 boards, 2 blocks, 2 of 5 shooting. Definitely getting a little more comfortable. Not quite there yet, but it's good to see him have the ball go through the basket a little bit. Just getting to a few more guys before we move on to our last segment of the show. Gob Gabriel's having a solid season, and he's doing it very quietly, but the confidence is way up for him. The way he's handling the ball, he's driving to the basket where he's at his best. Had a Euro step where he looked like Giannis from the Bucks. I mean, just huge steps through the lane, doing it legally, but he is looking better and better. 7 points, 2 rebounds on 3 of 6 shooting from this one, including a big 3. Gabriel is looking for a weapon off the bench, and he has been really solid for this team. We talked about Chapu a little bit. Had a solid night. 8 points and 2 steals, 2 assists in 23 minutes. I think the move to make Ruth the starter and Chapu the backup or the second rotation guy, I think it's one of those subtle moves by King Rice that we might look back in March and say that's what made the difference. That made such a difference for this team winning a championship or getting to a championship. I think it's one of those subtle moves that is going to be a huge, huge difference maker for this team. Totally just 5 points. We touched on that a little bit. But in the end, Monmouth gets a huge sweep, and we are moving on to Manhattan.
Yeah, not so subtle, because Ryan's going to continue to pat himself on the back and scream from the mountaintops that he's the reason that that switch has been made. But yeah, Manhattan, when you look at Manhattan, the Jaspers have been so inconsistent at the beginning of the year. Remember, Ryan and I both had them with Niagara as that next team who was going to step up and be right on the cusp of a MAC contender following the Big Four. The beginning of MAC play, they split with a bad Rider team. Then they were swept by a Marist squad that Ryan and I don't think much of at all. They had a split against this Quinnipiac team that we had just seen. But then last weekend, they swept a disappointing Niagara squad. And listen, if you could sweep a team that has Marcus Hammond, you're doing something right. And with that being said, I think Manhattan will be riding high with their confidence. They're on a 3-game winning streak. You got to go to Draddy. Draddy's a tough place to play, even without fans, because it just has such an unnatural feeling of a place to shoot the basketball. It's not quite a gym. It's not quite an arena. It almost feels it's just such an odd feeling. It almost feels like you're in a factory when you walk in there. It's a very bizarre place. They're led by Seton Hall transfer junior 6'4" star guard Anthony Nelson, who, just so everybody knows, Monmouth had reached out to when he hit the transfer market. What a weapon he would have been added to our already deep backcourt. He's 14 points, almost 4 boards, 3 assists, a steal, but he does turn it over nearly 4 times a game. You know that Manhattan likes to play that frantic, frenetic pace, so turnovers will be coming both ways. Hopefully they match the 27 that Quinnipiac had.
Oh, wait, Mark, the style of play where they foul you every trip down the court?
Yeah, they get away with it just like Pickett gets away with it on offense. 6'5" junior wing, Eli Buchanan. He's 12.6 boards, 2 assists. The steals and the blocks for these guys are crazy. He gets 2 steals, 1.5 blocks. Then 6'9" junior Warren Williams, probably the best back to the basket scorer in the MAC. He averages 8.6 points per game, 7 boards, almost 1.5 blocks. And then they have the diminutive senior guard Samir Stewart, who's about 8.5 points per game, and he's an X factor. He's only shooting at about 25% from 3 right now, but he's a kid who's been consistent from the outside before, and he's a guy who can break a game open, much like a Donovan Totley type kid.
So we have Manhattan on the road this weekend coming up. Then we are home against Fairfield, not at Iona. So there was a schedule change. Mm-hmm. Iona is dealing with another COVID situation. Very unfortunate for them. So instead, we're at Manhattan this weekend coming up. Then we host Fairfield for what is our last home series of the season. Then for now, who knows what's going to happen. Then we are at Iona. Then we are at Niagara. And then we are at Rider. So here's the game plan. Hopefully, Monmouth can sweep this weekend, but you hope for at least a split against Manhattan. So if you split, you're 8-4, okay? Mm-hmm. You get Fairfield, who I think is by far the weakest team in the conference, at home. Hopefully you sweep that one. Now you're 10-4. You go to Iona, who will be fresh off a shutdown. Odds are you probably split them and go to 11-5.
Hey, Ryan,
yeah.
Iona will be actually on their 4th and 5th game on their 7th and 8th day of their coming off their shutdown when they play Monmouth.
Wow.
They're playing like a Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, or something to that regard. And Monmouth is going to get them where I think they're going to have tired legs.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. So let's say worst case you're 11-5. You go to Niagara, you're hoping for a split up there.
Yep.
I think we're definitely more talented than they are, but going to Niagara, it's very difficult to get that 2-game sweep on a normal year versus Niagara and Canisius, no matter how bad the teams are. So let's say you're 12-6.
Yeah, plus they'll be riding high up there as Super Bowl champions, so that'll be really tough to go into that town.
You better hope. And then you're at Rider, but guess what? There's no fans. There's no kids cursing you out in the front row. There's no guys in your face basically stepping on the end lines and the sidelines, screaming at you the whole time, cursing at you the whole time, saying words that are derogatory, which I've heard in the past. that group is vicious and they're nasty and I hate them. But you know what? Guess what? You're not there. Haha. So it's a much easier environment for Monmouth to play at, and all those guys are gone. Jordan's gone. What's the other guy?
Demencio Vaughn is
Demencio
sitting
Vaughn.
on the end of the bench at
So-
Ole Miss. Fred Scott is a backup power forward at Boston College. It's unbelievable what they lost. They lost 4,000. And then the big lefty who I always thought was terrible. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name now, but whatever. They're all gone. I mean, that's 4,000 point scorers they lost.
And now Baggett's going to bring in pretty good guys, although he can't get it done in the tournament, which we know. We've highlighted many times. He always brings in good talent, but they're young, they're scrappy, but they're not a great team. So to me, Monmouth is set up to get to at least 13 wins in the MAC with potential to get to 14 or 15. Odds are they're going to lose one or two here and there, and maybe they slip up a little bit. But I think 13 is a very realistic number right now, with 14 or 15 being the upside there. So there's definitely a shot for Monmouth to stay in that 1 to 2 range. Now, I don't think Siena is going to lose very many games. I think if they lose a couple, it's going to be an upset. I personally see Siena going at least like 17-3. I just don't think they're going to lose many games. But I'll take number 2 seed. I'll take that any day of the week.
So Ryan, here's something interesting though. Siena and Iona are way behind in the amount of games they've played. And from my understanding, they're going to be possibly adding a bunch of Wednesday games for them. So they could have to take a trip to Canisius, or Canisius is also shut down currently as well. But say they had to take a midweek trip. I mean, that makes things a lot harder for Siena and Iona trying to fit in all those games and playing five games in 7 or 8 nights. So you know what? Right now they're riding high. I think Siena's 4-0 in the conference, and Iona's 3-1. But having to play all those games consistently, that's a grind. And you know what? Maybe they get knocked off a couple times, and it wears on them a bit.
So we're going to finish this up with some fan questions. We're going to try to go a little quick through it because we are approaching an hour on here. I like to keep it at 45 minutes, but you know what? We had a lot to talk about, and it's a lot of good stuff, so I'm not worried about it. This is from Brian on Facebook. They all came from Facebook. So we've started and mostly used small lineups where Malik is our big on the court. This works for teams like Quinnipiac, Canisius, Marist, Fairfield, Manhattan. However, we know Siena will run lineups with Camper, Young, and Stormo. So my question is, do you think King should run out bigger lineups that have our bigs to get them acclimated to a possible tournament matchup with Siena and possibly Iona? This could take away from the best game plan against the Manhattan or Fairfield, but as unfortunate as it is, regular season isn't as important as the weekend in Atlantic City. Well, thanks for the question, Brian. I think I agree. They should throw out lineups here and there. I don't think it behooves this team to play more than one big at a time. I don't think that is our skill. I think we get weaker if we have Ruddy and Foster on the floor, or Ruddy and Jarvis. I think we are our best when we have one big and 4 guards. I do think we should play more lineups here and there that are a little bigger, but I think this team is based on our speed, our transition game, our up-tempo, which is the 8th fastest pace in the entire country. That's our strength, and we know King Rice does not care about the other team as much. It's more we do what we do, and we worry about the rest later. So although I agree we should play bigs a little more often, maybe get them used to it in case they needed to, I think our strength is really with our guards and playing one big. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, and I agree, and we kind of hit on this earlier. I think of those 4 bigs, you need definitely 1, if not 2, to step up and separate themselves, so we know what bigs are the bigs that we can count on and are going to give us good production.
So this is from Tom on Facebook. What's going on with Vaughn? We will need his size when we start playing the bigger teams like Brian just stated. So I agree. So, Vaughn, like we stated earlier, he's just coming back from concussion. King will probably limit his minutes a little bit here and there. And listen, he's still finding his way within this team. King is still figuring out who to place where, what rotations are right. And that's something that usually happens at a conference play in the beginning of MAC season. Well, we didn't have that. So really, at this point in the season, we'd be still in the first third of our schedule of the MAC season. So, I think Vaughn is going to be fine. I don't know if he's going to turn into the player that we want this year. I do see him playing a huge role on this team probably a couple weeks from now once he gets speed under him again. His conditioning's back, and he's got some game rhythm going. He's becoming a beast again. But I think he's going to be eased back in a little bit here.
Yeah, without the non-conference play, you really are seeing that Jarvis and Totally being integrated is taking more time and has become more of a process than maybe some of us had anticipated. These next 10 MAC games, they're probably not more important to anyone more on this roster than Jarvis Vaughn. He needs to show out in practice. He needs to show out in games. He needs to take that step forward and be that big guy that separates himself among those four bigs. And I think he can. I think that the talent is there. I think that the tough mentality is there. It's just you could have all the potential in the world, but ultimately you need to have production. And these are huge next 10 games for Jarvis Vaughn and for Monmouth as Ryan and I continue to beat the drum that he and Totley are the keys to the difference between being a championship team and being a MAC title contender in Atlantic City.
So last question here, Bill, before we head out of here.
Oof.
How many of the senior players will opt to come back and play another season? I would strongly recommend they all come back, get their master's degrees, and improve their position in life post-basketball. If they go on and play overseas, they have more experience. So very interesting. So we've been talking about this a little bit, just texting each other. So this team has 4 seniors. It's Malik, it's Dion, it's George, and it's Marcus. I personally do not think Dion will come back. I think from what we heard, he had a lot of offers to play in a bigger conference this offseason, and he chose to come back to Monmouth. I don't see him coming back. I see him going overseas and maybe even G League and trying to get a contract to play basketball professionally. The others, I think they have a chance to come back. I could definitely see Malik coming back. I could see George coming back. These two kids just love basketball, along with Marcus McClary. And again, it depends on what kind of job offers these guys have. If they have, a nice finance job or something to start their career and not in basketball lined up, they may choose to go to the workforce because they may have a nice salary waiting for them or something else. Or if they want to get their master's degree, have fun playing for another year as fifth-year seniors, as true fifth-year seniors, because they actually play a fifth season. I could definitely see those 3 coming back, which is going to be crazy for the roster because who knows what it's going to look like for all these sports with the scholarship issues and the smaller colleges having to cough up more scholarship money. It's going to be very interesting. I personally see the other 3 having a good chance to come back. And Dion, I don't expect him back. But that's all speculation. I don't know those guys personally, so I can't speak for them. That's just what I'm predicting. What about you, Mark?
So first thing I will say is Malik Martin is very young for his grade.
Yes.
So the urgency for him might be a little bit less in the fact that he'll be graduating college at 21 years old this year. And I think that kind of lends itself to, hey, what's another year on the West Long Branch campus, especially with the fact that he's showing so much improvement this year. Number two, Marcus McClary had Ivy League offers against Monmouth coming out of high school. So he's a kid who is a high intellectual, high academic kid. So if you're looking for a kid who takes his academics really strongly and you think would want an opportunity to get a master's degree, probably the kid that had offers from places like Dartmouth. Number 3, George Pappas. There's no guarantee that George Pappas is going to have a chance to play basketball overseas. George Pappas, if you remember, his freshman year got cut short due to some injuries, and he barely played as a sophomore. He had decent playing time as a junior, big playing time as a senior. King Rice had said if he wasn't playing on Monmouth, he would have been outside shooting around like a nutcase like I am on a 35-degree day, and he's from New Jersey. I think that for George Pappas, you can definitely make a case that he'll be back. Now, for all 3 of them, they're not having the typical senior college experience this year. maybe the COVID vaccine comes
True.
through, maybe things calm down, and they want to come back and have that senior year experience to be able to go to Jack's on a Thursday night and, do the senior trips and all that stuff that, seniors at Monmouth normally do. I think that people are undervaluing that a lot, that their experience in college has been taken away this year. And to get that experience back is huge. Remember when Matt Leinart didn't come out after his junior year in college because he said the senior year experience in USC is like nothing that anywhere else can offer me. So you think about that, and I think that those three kids, for all those reasons we previously stated, could come back. Dion Hammond can graduate this year and go overseas. The one way, and I don't expect him back, but the one thing that I will say is if he does truly have NBA aspirations, that maybe he goes through the process and they tell him there's, 2 or 3 things they really want him to work on. And if you see the way that he has improved from last offseason to this year, if he believes that he can make a significant jump and have much better tape and have a legit chance to get to that G League or NBA, that's the only way that I could see it swing. And I know that King Rice has continued to say, as he grows, we think that he can play at the highest level. So maybe there is a plan and a hope that he will return and have more tape, more games next year and a bigger season and get to that highest level.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think we would all sign on for all 4 of these guys coming back.
Yeah, and if you're asking me, yes, I want all 4 of them back.
Last thing before we go, I do want to give our condolences to King Rice and his family for the loss of his father-in-law. We found this out in the post-game press conference. He was very emotional as expected, talking about how big of a part of his life he was. He came to watch games and stay with them sometimes. Very close with his kids. So he mentioned his wife and one of his younger sons is out in California. King can't be there right now. And this is hard. This is part of the COVID thing, guys. These guys are playing basketball and coaching and doing their jobs. And you know what? Someone in their family passes away, and maybe they can't go to the funeral, or else you need a 2-week quarantine when you come back. And, it's those things about this season that King keeps talking about. And it's very heavy and it's very difficult on these guys. He keeps honing in on that. And you saw it for himself, not being able to go to your father-in-law's funeral. It's really difficult. It's really tough. But, we give a lot of credit to King Rice for what he's doing this year. He's had a great season so far. And we do want to give our condolences to him and his family for the sad news out of West Long Branch.
Yeah, one thing King said that I had never known before was that his father-in-law actually attended Monmouth University, or I guess it was Monmouth College at the time as an undergrad. So, being part of King Rice's family, honestly, you're already part of the Monmouth family, but knowing that he was a Monmouth man as well, collectively as a university, as a community, I want to wish King Rice, his in-laws, and his family all the best as they go through this trying time. And King had said how hard it will be for Xander going through it, being up at Bucknell. And when you think about what's going on in the world with COVID and among all the other craziness that, King had said he's just so thankful for all the good people that are around Xander up at Bucknell. And again, this really makes me think of King Rice as the person, and what we're seeing from being in these post-game pressers. We're seeing so much more into him than what you just see on the sideline. And again, the way that you hear him speak, it would just make me feel so comfortable sending, my young man to be part of his program and to be taken care of. And like he always says, developing them into good young men and Monmouth men. And so we did lose a Monmouth man in King's father-in-law, and we wish them all the best.
No doubt about it. Well said. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Monmouth gets a sweep over Quinnipiac, 7-3 in the MAC, going into our road series against Manhattan in the second half of this MAC season. Guys, please stay safe out there. Wear the mask. Please be careful. Let's get through this thing as quickly as possible. A lot's going out there right now, so please be safe, be smart out there, so we can all get back to the Ocean First Bank Center and actually watch basketball live and watch the team we love at Monmouth. All right? Have a great day, and thanks for listening.